Hello everybody, Scotia here with the second part of my breakdown on what we currently know about Street Fighter 6. And if you watched the previous video I did, you'll know that this video is going to be solely focused on all of the leaks that have come out about the game since the State of Play trailer the other day. So if you don't want to know anything about that, if you want to be left completely blind and not know the roster, because a lot of the roster's leaked and stuff like that, please turn this video off now, go away. Just make sure you don't watch past this point, because I'm going to be openly talking and showing everything that we currently know about the game in terms of leaks. If you just want to know what we know that has been officially put out by Capcom, so basically the stuff from the trailer and the website, please check out the other video. The link is in the corner right now. And then don't look at this video, because I am going to be going fully open into everything we know. So let's begin. So I'm going to start with what is no doubt the hot topic for quite a lot of people, and that is the roster, because as of right now, we currently know almost the entire roster, if not the whole roster, based on how things go, but I'll talk about that later on. And that's a crazy thing to really think about, that, you know, not even 24 hours after the trailer at the State of Play came out, we knew the majority, if not the whole roster. But yeah, I'm going to go over the characters that showed up in this leaked concept art piece that came out bit by bit, I think, at the time. And I'm going to basically go over it from, you know, the top row, from the top left of the top row, I'm going to go down. So I'm going to name them all in the order that they're in, left to right. So if you see a character and you don't know who they are, if they're new or they have a drastic redesign, you can't tell who they are, I'll be able to, you know, let you know who they are. So we're going to start from the top left, and we're going to go with Ryu, Ken, Zangief, Dhalsim, E Honda, Blanca, Guile, and Chun-Li. Then on the second row, we have Cammy, DJ, Rashid, Jury, Ed, and Akuma. Then on the bottom row we have Luke, Marissa, Jamie, Mimi or Manon, Lily, JP, Kimberly, and Aki. So straight away, what stood out to me about this leaked roster is that it feels very organized, and I mean this in terms of the rows. Now, obviously, we're getting all of the 8 original World Warriors from Street Fighter 2, and I'll talk about that at the end. And my feelings on that, because as I'm sure most of you know, if you've seen this channel or you know anything about me, you'll know that I have thoughts about that, but I'll kind of cover that at the end. So the way this currently seems laid out to me is the top row is entirely Street Fighter 2 World Warriors. You know, the World Warriors are the World Warriors. They're the most iconic characters in the entire franchise, if not, you know, fighting game history. And yeah, it's very clearly set out with those 8 on top. And then the second row, we only have about 6 characters. And straight away to me, these are clearly the returning Street Fighter characters that aren't the token World Warriors. So we have Cammy, DJ, and Akuma, and they're all obviously characters that were introduced in the extra versions of Street Fighter 2, like New Challenges and Super Turbo, etc. And then we get Jury, who's obviously from Street Fighter 4, and then Rashid and Ed, who are from Street Fighter 5. And then we get to the bottom row, and these are obviously all 8 new characters that are being added to the game. And so clearly to me, there's clearly an 8-6-8 kind of formation going on here, and the one that stands out is clearly the 6 in the middle, which is the non-World Warrior returning Street Fighter characters. And what's also quite noticeable that people straight away picked up on, and especially me, is that there are currently in this leak, there are no Alpha or Street Fighter 3 characters, like at all. And currently my theory is that to make this roster 3 rows of an even 8, I think there's at least 2 more characters that aren't in this leak that are going to be part of the base roster. And I think one is going to be an Alpha character, and I think the other is going to be a 3 character. Because then in that way, at least every game in the series gets 1 representative, and I think that's fair. And at the moment, of course, can go either way. This could easily just be the base roster as we know it, but that's kind of how I feel personally at the moment. But that's kind of more, you know, theory, kind of subjective kind of guessing, so we'll move on from that. But that is, at the moment, that is looking like what our roster is going to be. The only other thing that really stands out about this image is that every character that is returning from a previous Street Fighter game is getting a drastic redesign, basically, or at least a redesign that is shaking up what they usually wear in a significant way. And I personally think that's great. I think if you're going to have all of the 8 World Warriors in their day 1, they need to look differently. We cannot have another situation like Street Fighter 5 where Zangief and Chun-Li and Ryu looked exactly the same. I always kind of held it against those characters, mostly Zangief, because I'm not the biggest fan of his design anyway, and I think he's so easily able to be reinvented in an exciting way that kind of like is still easily identifiable as Zangief, but just makes him go, oh wow, it's Zangief, but he's just fresher. So I'm glad that at least, you know, trying to make everybody stand out and jump out more and mix them up a bit, which is great. But yeah, other than that, roster-wise, that's all I can really talk about from the main leak at this moment. Once the concept art leak of the base roster had been out for a few hours, we all kind of thought that was it, but then all of a sudden last night, or in the evening for some, we suddenly started getting leaked gameplay video clips from this random website that I've never heard of before, and the first one that came out was footage of Cammy's super art. And, you know, for the most part, it's a cool super and all that. I'm not really going to talk about the super because, to be honest, there's not really that much to talk about. It's a cool looking super. There we go, I talked about it. But the two things that stood out to me were, number one was that she has a classic costume, which we kind of knew already. I put out a tweet the other day, not long after the State of Play had finished, where I noticed that you could see Cammy in her classic costume fighting what looked like Guile in the background of one of the screenshots that had been officially released by Capcom. And so we kind of knew she was going to get a classic costume, but this is a much better look at her classic costume, and for the most part it looks kind of similar to Street Fighter V's, but it has the paint, the camouflage paint on her legs, which I think might be from Street Fighter 4 if my memory is correct in that. So yeah, pretty standard classic costume for Cammy, nothing really shocking there. We do also though get a look at her new default costume that you saw in the artwork previously that I just shown, and yeah, she looks really good. I'm really happy with Cammy's redesign. I think, you know, it's good that she got one. I've never really been a fan of the leotard, but I've never hated it. It's just kind of always been there, but I'm pretty interested in her kind of getting a refresh and something new. So that was the super art footage of Cammy's that kind of came out, and then not long after that it was a gif of Ken in a character select screen, and this has kind of been a hot topic, Ken in general. There's been so much conversation going on, and I'm going to get to that later on, my comments on that. But it was a gif of Ken in the character select screen, and it's, you know, it's hard to see because it kind of looks like shaky cam footage almost, but at one point you kind of like, at the end of the gif, you can pause it and you can see that there's a kind of like, you see a bit of a character select screen, and it's very clearly an early version of Street Fighter 6, very beta version. The most obvious sign of that is you can see Guile and Dalsum have their Street Fighter 5 character select screen poses in their slots. So very clearly early work, you know, this is clearly meant to not be seen by the general public. And you kind of see some other stuff in here, you see some of the names, you see the icons for Jury and Kimberly. This is also where the confusion about one of the new characters' names comes from, because in the roster leak image of the concept art, I think her name is Mimi, but in this screen, her name is Manon. So I don't know which name is the old one. Given how early beta footage this version looks, I'm gonna kind of just throw it out there and maybe say Manon is the old name, but it could just as easily be Mimi. We'll find out soon, but it's either Mimi or Manon. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, that was kind of it in terms of like the footage that got leaked, because I know that was being shared around a lot. It doesn't really give us a huge look at anything really deeply. It just shows us, basically just shows us Cammy and Ken, two characters obviously that have not been officially revealed. And that was kind of it in terms of like major leaks, but there was also other stuff that came out that people started noticing pretty soon, once kind of people started connecting dots of things that were in the trailer that I talked about in the previous video. And that's what I'm going to talk about now, because this is where things kind of get a bit more interesting. So unbeknownst to pretty much everybody who, you know, didn't see these posts at the time, we actually got two separate leaks, I think from two separate people, 5 and 3 months ago, which in the case of the 5 month ago leak was completely before, you know, Street Fighter 6 got announced, so there would have been no idea that we would have known anything about the game, you know, as us, the general public. So that alone makes it interesting. And the other leak was only 3 months ago, which was after the reveal, but before, you know, the State of Play. And both leaks have a lot of information in them that is very accurate to what we now know is in Street Fighter 6 or what is going to be in Street Fighter 6. So I'm going to go over the posts now, and I'm going to have it on the screen so you can kind of read along with me. And we're kind of just going to break down each point here, and I'm going to make a little comment on it as we go through it. And for the leak that was 5 months ago, it starts off with, so I've heard rumors from another user. 1. Street Fighter 6 will have 25 characters on vanilla release, 12 additional characters in the super version, and 5 additional characters in the ultra version. Now, this is interesting, very, very interesting, for 2 reasons. Number 1, immediately 25 characters on vanilla release. As I said previously, the concept art leak that we saw only had 22 characters on it, which, and I said I was expecting maybe 2 more characters to make it 24. If this is true, and given the rest of the information that is in this post, I'm very much guessing that it is true. It's looking like we may be even getting 3 more characters, but, you know, who knows who that last character could be. You know, it could be another Alpha rep, could be another 3 rep, could be a Final Fight rep, could be another new character. Really no way of knowing. But 25 characters on release is more than I was expecting. I said in my previous, you know, roster speculation video, which is just completely like, you know, that thing is worthless now. But in that video, I was saying I was expecting between about, I think, 20 to 22 or 24 was my guess, because that was about what Street Fighter 5 should have launched with if they launched with Season 1 included with the base 16. So 25 is above and beyond what I was expecting. I think 25 is a fantastic amount. I literally cannot complain about 25 characters in a game day one, especially given how Street Fighter is a more one-on-one game in nature, say compared to like KOF, which is 3-on-3, and you need more characters to kind of help balance that 3v3 gameplay in those 3v3 teams. So for Street Fighter, I didn't really expect like a ton of characters on day one release. I thought there was definitely going to be more than 16 that was there in Street Fighter 5 day one, but I did not expect 25. I was honestly expecting about maybe 20, so that's a very, very pleasant surprise. So if we do end up getting 25 characters, I'd be more than happy. I really couldn't complain, to be honest, about that. There'd be nothing for me to really complain about. So yeah, I really hope that ends up being true, but you know, even if this is a bit off, I still think we're at least getting 24 because of the two gaps I mentioned previously in the leaked roster. You know, like as I was saying, the 8x6x8 kind of formation, I think it will at least end up being 8x8x8, but you know, if it's 25, we'll at least get one character that's, you know, gets added to one of the slots that makes it uneven, whether it's one of the returning non-World Warrior characters or it's a new character entirely. We'll find out, I guess. So the other thing that's also very interesting is the 12 additional characters being added in a super version and 5 additional characters being added in an ultra version. And I think this is interesting because this kind of implies that Capcom are going to be getting rid of the season pass model that they were using throughout Street Fighter V, and the model that a lot of other fighting games use for their DLC characters. And while I personally never had a problem with season passes, I think doing, you know, updated versions or a new version that kind of like keeps the same disc and all that, because I know a big problem that people had with Street Fighter 4 was that if you had Street Fighter 4, you couldn't play somebody who had Ultra, you know, or something like that. If you had Super Street Fighter 4, you couldn't play somebody who owned Vanilla Street Fighter 4, and you know, there were different characters that people couldn't access, and it was just a mess, and I think it was a very messy way of kind of updating a fighting game. And that was something they very much focused on with Street Fighter 5. They said very matter-of-factly, this is the only disc you will need to buy, and that was entirely true. The copy of Street Fighter 5 that I own right now, that I use to play on, that I use to record all the necessary footage for, that is the same disc I bought in 2016. I've never had to buy another disc. I've never needed any other disc for Street Fighter 5. That is the disc that I've only ever needed. And what I can see them doing is doing something that is kind of a mix of that, you know, the updates of Street Fighter 4, but with the one disc mentality of Street Fighter 5. So kind of actually similar to what they did with Street Fighter 5 in the sense that like they would do an update and you'd get Arcade Edition, and then, you know, a couple years later they did another update and you got Champion Edition. You didn't have to buy Champion Edition, even though they had their own kind of like separate disc that you could buy. But if you already owned Street Fighter 5, you didn't need to buy another disc. You just got an update that gave you the HUD and the UI and all the other visual and audio updates that came, and balance updates that came with Champion Edition. And I could see them doing that. And I think that'd be interesting, but dropping the season pass aspect to it and just, you know, waiting a year and a half, who knows how long between the base game and then the super version or the ultra version, you know, how long it would take for them to kind of release them between each other. You know, we could be sitting with the base roster that's been leaked, all 8 World Warriors and, you know, one, if we're lucky, Street Fighter 3 character. We could be sitting like that for a year, and that part kind of is meh to me, but I'm willing to give them a chance. I think what also could be good with the updated versions is, I think, you know, it could allow us to get a lot of big updates to some of the game modes like World Tour. Like, I can very much easily imagine Capcom, when Super Version comes out, they just drop a very big update that adds a new location to World Tour that we can explore, and then that includes all of the DLC characters that are added. Like, all 12 of these DLC characters get incorporated and their stories get incorporated into World Tour, and you can interact with them and the characters related to them. So say, for example, you know, hypothetical, the first character that comes to my head, of course, is going to be if Sean is in the 12 additional characters that get added in Super Version. Maybe, you know, they do a big update to World Tour, and then we can go to Brazil and we can meet the Matsuda family. Something like that. Pure spitball and just kind of like throwing ideas out there. But that would be something that I think could be very cool. Of course, they can do that without having to, you know, drop 12 characters at once. But I think it allows them to kind of have a specific opportunity to be like, okay, we're doing a big update now for this thing, instead of kind of being like how it was very early in Street Fighter V's life, where it was like, we're going to be dropping the update that has the story mode. We don't know when we're going to drop it, but we're going to drop it. So yeah, there's kind of a few ways they can go about it, but that's a very interesting part to me, and that to me is one of the things from these leaks that I think really stands out to me. So very interested in seeing how that goes, basically. Moving on with the leak, we then get to number 2, which is we'll have recognizable faces like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Dhalsim, Rose, and Luke. And obviously now we know that Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Dhalsim, and Luke are indeed in the game, but the one that obviously stands out there is Rose. And Rose isn't in the character concept art leak, she's just not there. And this is interesting because, as you can see in the rest of this, everything else in this leak is very, very spot on and very accurate so far as to what we know about the other characters that have been leaked. So going by this, Rose is pretty much likely to be in this game in the base roster. And this kind of goes into what I was saying earlier about, the 8x8x8 and how I think that's basically going to be the end goal for how the roster is going to be split up between which characters are represented and which characters are brought back. And I said earlier as well that my theory was that we were going to get at least 2 more characters in the base roster, and that one was going to be an alpha rep and the other was going to be a Street Fighter 3 rep. And obviously I didn't say it back then because I hadn't covered it, but I think the alpha rep in the base roster of Street Fighter 6 is going to be Rose. And I've always felt like Rose had a good chance to be in Street Fighter 6's base roster, if not very early in the game. But it does look like that she is going to be in the game at this point, and I do feel like she is going to be at least one alpha rep. There could be another one if the 25 character base roster rumor is correct, but at the very least, it does look very likely that Rose is going to be in the game, which is very interesting. Then we move on to number 3, which is that Luke is one of the 8 new characters, including a European female MMA character, similar moves to Abel. Now this seems to be describing Mimi or Manon, depending on what her name is. Then we get a black female ninja, and we know that this is Kimberly. She was already in the end of the State of Play trailer, so that's not a surprise. We know that a character like this was going to be in the game without the leak, but we know that even more now that we've seen her full body portrait in the concept art leak. Then has a man who fights in an orange suit, which we now know is the guy called JP. And then an East Asian assassin, which we know now is Aki, an elderly fighter. Now this one is odd because this could either be a scrapped character, this could be a character we haven't seen yet, or this could be JP and that there was simply just a miscommunication or a misunderstanding with the person who wrote this and they didn't know that which one was which. I think that's also possible. So we'll kind of put an elderly fighter on the back burner for now, but yeah, obviously JP is the only one that looks elderly in terms of the new characters, so we don't know that. And then goes on by saying that Street Fighter 6 is to be revealed at Capcom Cup in early 2022, which happened. And then the last one is that the box art will have Luke on the front. And this one, we don't know for sure yet what the box art is going to be, but it does look like at the end of the State Play trailer, they show an image and it has Luke and Jamie on it. And I think this is probably going to be the box art of the game. So I feel like in that sense, I'm going to say that this guy was also right about this as well. So out of this entire leak, I think only one part is a bit iffy, which is the part about the elderly fighter. So that's very interesting. And that really, adds a lot of credence. Because even if the elderly fighter thing is wrong and it's complete, and there's no elderly fighter, that's still like 90% right in terms of everything else that, we now can easily go, this is from the leaks that we now know are going to be in the game because it's been confirmed by Capcom. So I have no doubt that everything in this post is true or is going to happen. Of course, anything can change. Some of this can be from, early stuff that's been scrapped. Rosen might be scrapped. The roster might have been 25 at one point, but has now been cut down to 22. Anything can happen. But the fact that everything else has been so spot on in this league, yeah, I'm convinced everything here is going to be the case. I'm convinced we're going to get 25 characters in the base roster. I think we're going to have Rose in the game. Everything else I think is pretty spot on. So in that sense, I think this is a leak that we can fully believe. It's been a couple days since I recorded the rest of this audio of the video you're watching, and since then we've actually gotten a rather unfortunate update regarding this particular leak. And the person who leaked this info, the one from Game FAQs, I've been told that this person is also Vergaben, who is the person who leaked the next leak I'm going to be talking about in a minute. Apparently he kind of did an update post the other day where he basically admitted that he had assumed certain info from this leak from the Game FAQs post that included the base roster number of 25 characters, Rose, and the nature of Street Fighter 6 getting super versions and then an ultra version. Apparently those were all assumptions on his part, and he doesn't actually know what the final base roster number is. He doesn't know if Rose is in the game or not, and he has no idea how they're going to be releasing characters and updates to the game post-launch. I have no idea why he basically assumed this and just said it in his post. I've heard that Vergaben is known actually for just making stuff up and kind of like fudging the truth and kind of like taking bits of info from other leaks and kind of adding it to his own while adding his own info to kind of make it seem his own. So that's very unfortunate. I'm very disappointed. I'm very upset with Vergaben. I know he probably won't care, but to kind of lie and kind of get people's hopes up like that. Obviously, it's not the be all end all. There's still a chance. I mean, I'm still fairly, well, not fairly, but I'm still kind of holding out onto hope that my theory about the 8-6-8 formation is true, and that it's actually going to be 8-8-8. You know, 8 World Warriors, 8 non-World Warriors, and 8 new characters. But yeah, kind of a lot of what I said in that previous part just now is kind of inaccurate. I'm still going to keep it in the video. I could take it out, but I'm going to keep it in because for the most part a lot of it is still accurate, and I think it, you know, I kind of go over some good kind of theories of stuff of how things could work. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to kind of throw this in there and kind of just give you an update. I didn't want to just leave it and kind of get people's hopes up as well. So yeah, I'm very bummed. It did give me hope that there was a chance we could get, you know, Rose and maybe a Street Fighter 3 character or somebody else, but it seems like we're kind of back to square one in that sense. And we're back to kind of maybe looking like this game isn't going to launch with any Street Fighter 3 characters, which would be incredibly disappointing. But I think that's a topic for another day once we actually know for sure we're not going to get any Street Fighter 3 characters. You know, we've still got a long time to go till this game comes out, and at least another year. So at the very least, I kind of just want to give it a minute, let time kind of go on and see where we come. But if this is true and, you know, we don't get any Street Fighter 3 characters, it's definitely going to be disappointing, and it's definitely going to be a topic that I'll be covering on this channel. So yeah, that was it. I really just wanted to come in here for a bit before I continue. I'm going to go on to the rest of the video. Moving on to the next leak, we have a Reddit post from 3 months ago that was posted by somebody called Vergaben, and if you don't know or if you remember, Vergaben was a leaker that was quite prominent a few years ago. I remember hearing his name quite often during Street Fighter 5 Season 2, Season 3 span around that time, and he was known for kind of posting stuff and, you know, being fairly accurate. It was clear at the time he had sources within Capcom, but he kind of trailed off by Season 4 onwards, and he kind of but he came back 3 months ago, and this really slipped under the radar, similar to the Game FAQs post I was just talking about. And again, he went into detail more so about the new characters, and most people just kind of ignored it because obviously back then, no real way of knowing if he was right or not. But now that we know the trailer and now that we know the leaked character concepts, we know now that this guy was also very spot on with pretty much everything he says in this post. So I'm going to go into more detail now and kind of go over it bit by bit. So he starts off with talking about the Dandy Russian with Psycho Power in a peach/orange coloured suit. Clearly he's talking about JP, that much is obvious, so he's correct about this. The next one is African American ninja girl with an orange hoodie, black pants, wears earbuds and has blue highlights in her hair while using roller skates. This is clearly talking about Kimberly, there's no doubt about it, he's also correct about this one. Italian wrestler woman with red hair and an MMA Legionnaire look that wears black and gold. So this is obviously talking about Marisa, and given we saw her in the State of Play trailer and she was also in the character concept leak, we know for sure this one is also correct. Moving on, we get Young and Yang's cousin, wears yellow, uses Drunken Fist style. Now this one's obviously talking about Jamie, and the wears yellow and uses Drunken Fist style is obviously correct. But the part that stands out is that Vergaben says that Jamie is the cousin of Young and Yang, and all we get from Jamie's bio is that he just simply looks up to them and that, you know, Young and Yang are his idols as the protector of their towns. But when you also factor in Lee and how he's Young and Yang's uncle and that he uses a Drunken Fist style, as does Jamie, you can kind of put two together and kind of think, you know, maybe the idea of Young and Yang being Jamie's cousins are kind of, you know, isn't that much of a crazy idea. But, you know, this isn't mentioned anywhere yet. We don't know if this is confirmed or not. It just simply says on the website that he kind of just looks up to them. So I'm going to give this one 50% of a tick for now, but I do think that it is pretty likely that Jamie's going to be revealed at some point to be Young and Yang's cousin. So yeah, I'm going to give that 50% of a tick for now, but we'll come back to this one later. The next one simply just says female Abel, which is funny, but when you look at the actual character concept art list, you just know straight away who he's talking about, and this one is Mimi or Manon. And yeah, female Abel, I mean, I can see it, definitely can see the female Abel kind of connotation there. How you can come up to the conclusion that Mimi or Manon is a female Abel, so I give him that one as a correct one. We then get Mexican girl in a green tunic with an Aztec weapon, noted to may have some kind of relation to T-Hawk. So again, obviously this is clearly Lily, so he's correct about this one. Similar to Jamie though, we don't know for sure yet if she actually is related to T-Hawk. Obviously she's not been revealed, so they may just come out right out the gate and say that she's related to T-Hawk, or they may kind of hide it like they might be doing for Jamie. But, you know, either way, I'm going to give this one a tick and say that, yeah, they also got this one right. We then move on to Chinese assassin lady with a hairstyle like Sawada from Kengan that wears a black dress and uses poison like Fang. Obviously, totally talking about Aki here, there's no doubt there. So obviously this one is completely correct as well. Then we get to the final part, and this is kind of the bigger paragraph from this info drop. And he says that there will be other characters returning aside from Ryu and Luke. I can confirm that Chun-Li, Zangief and Cammy will also be in. For default costumes, it was said to me prior to this reveal months ago that Ryu has a beard and Luke's design was being tweaked. They had more preliminary design info, as I was told that Chun-Li's design will probably stay the same, maintaining her classic look or close to it. Zangief will likely have a bit more flair to his design, and Cammy may wear pants this time. So there's a lot to unpack here with this one, not a ton of info like specifically that is like earth-shattering or something, but for the most part this one is also pretty much almost entirely correct. Ryu, Luke, Chun-Li, Zangief, Cammy, they're all confirmed, to be in the game. There was no doubt about any of that, obviously, so he's right about that. He goes on about saying that he knew prior to the reveal, because obviously I think this was posted after the game got revealed at Capcom Cup, so he said that he knew Ryu and Luke were going to have, redesigns. He then goes on into saying that he heard that Chun-Li's design was going to stay the same and, be her classic look. This was obviously incorrect. This one I kind of chalked down to more that at some point in time there was a debate and probably within the team about whether or not they go for the classic Chun-Li look or they give her a redesign. Obviously the redesign direction won and they went in that direction, which I'm glad. Don't hate Chun-Li's design, amazing design, but I'm glad they gave everybody a redesign. They say that Zangief will likely have a bit more flair to his design. I guess you could say that. I think Zangief honestly has one of the more boring redesigns, to be honest. It's very minimalist. They basically just gave him trousers, but A for effort, I guess. So I would say he's right about that one. And then Cammy may wear pants, obviously ended up being correct about this one, but she also, as we know, has the classic costume that is the normal leotard. So I would say outside of Chun-Li having a classic design, which I can, chalk up to just, incorrect info at the time, this is pretty much almost entirely correct. So again, big props to this one. So that's the two leaks that we got that were posted way before, this trailer came out and have now been retroactively shown to be correct. There wasn't so much info in the Vergaben leak, it was mainly just confirming, extra details that he knew about certain characters, mostly the newcomers. The only details we get is that Jamie is apparently Young and Yak's cousin and that Lily has some form of relationship or is somehow related to T-Hawk. But other than that, not as many huge bombs dropped in this one, but still nonetheless completely correct in almost every way. So that is everything we know about Street Fighter 6 currently in regards to all the leaks that have come out in the last couple of days. It's been about a day since we last got something new dropped about the game in terms of leaks, and we've had nothing since, so I think this is a pretty good time to do this video. But if we get any more info dropped at any point, I'll definitely make a video on it and kind of talk about it in a bit more detail. But yeah, at the moment I think things are kind of looking good for this game. As I said earlier, I didn't want to go too much into it because I didn't want people who are new to this channel to kind of come in and immediately hear me, bitching of how the state of the roster at the moment. I know I did a video that I took down not long afterwards where that was basically that was it. The video was me bitching about the roster, and it's my channel, I can kind of do what I want, but at the same time I did get a few comments of people who were maybe a bit harsh about how they were saying it, but they're basically saying to get over myself, to kind of relax, calm down, not the end of the world. And I did think about it and I was like, you know what, yeah, you're right, it's not the end of the world. There are positives here, even though it may not seem like it. One thing I am kind of thankful about with all the World Warriors coming back day one, straight away, is that now we don't have to worry about any of them being DLC. Now for DLC we can purely focus on Alpha and 3 and 4 and 5 characters, and those are all characters from those games. Well, not all characters, but the majority of the characters from those games are characters I like a lot. So now it's kind of smooth sailing in a way. And even with the Street Fighter 2 characters, most of the ones that are left that aren't in the game already are characters I like a lot. So yeah, I'm pretty kind of chill about it now. I'm still not happy. I'm still not, completely full of joy. I definitely wanted at least more than one Street Fighter 3 character, but at the same time, I am confident we're going to get at least one. Like I said earlier, I think to kind of make up the 24 that I initially had in my head, it was going to be, an Alpha character and a Street Fighter 3 character. I think Rose is definitely going to be the Alpha character now. The Street Fighter 3 character, to be honest, I think it's probably one of 3 characters. I think it's going to be either Dudley, Makoto, or Sean. And I try not to be biased with Sean, but I feel like Dudley and Makoto are both popular, they're both well liked, they both weren't in 5, and either one of them could be added to the roster and people would be happy. I still think Makoto is going to be DLC, but you never really know. I think Capcom could end up being generous in that regard, but we'll have to see. In regards to Sean, I think he'd be an interesting character to drop. I think personally with the way the game looks at the moment and the style and just the whole vibe of it, I think Sean would just thrive in this game. Like the way these characters look and the way the redesigns have been for everyone across the board, I so want to see Sean with a redesign like that fits the style of this game. It would be incredible. So yeah, Obviously, I want Sean a lot anyway, but like I'm even more kind of desperate for him now. But I think Sean would be a very exciting Street Fighter 3 rep. I think it would definitely shake things up a lot. I think a lot of people would be surprised. There's that thing with Sean. I don't think people hate Sean. I think most people are just ambivalent about him. And I think if they if drop Sean in the game, if they go, hey, here's the Street Fighter 3 rep for this game, it's Sean, and he has, you know, a redesign that's still Sean, but it's just, you know, fits with the aesthetic of the game, the more hip-hop kind of like the street and the urban vibe of it, it'd be so good. I think it would really shock a lot of people and be like, whoa, like, who's this character? And it's like, oh, it's Sean, he was always there, he was always cool. Anyway, I'm blabbering on. But yeah, I feel like it's either going to be Dudley, Makoto, or Sean. It could be like Alex or Ibuki or Gil or Yurien or anybody else from 3 that was in 5, but I feel like they'll hold off on those characters because, like I said, they were in 5. They've kind of had their moment, even for Alex, and I would adore Alex in this game just as much as I would adore Sean. But I think with Alex, you know, he was the first DLC character for 5, you know, I'm alright with waiting a bit for Alex, you know, as long as he gets in the game at some point, I'm fine with waiting a bit longer. But yeah, Sean is definitely the focus for me. But I think as well, I think it'd just be an interesting pick. They can sell the more popular DLC characters for Dudley and Makoto, you know, if they end up doing DLC characters, that is. But yeah, I don't know. I still feel like there's a chance for a Street Fighter 3 character in the base roster, and I still feel like there's a chance for Sean. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, in regards to the video that I took down, I just didn't like being a miserable bastard, to be honest. I didn't like being mopey and, you know, sorry for myself. So I took it down. I'm not going to take it back up. I think I've completely deleted it, to be honest. I don't really want to watch it again, because it's that thing I do sometimes where I really kind of just... When I get bad news like that, and that was bad news for me, like when I woke up, that was the first thing I saw was, you know, all the World Warriors are back. I was just so like, oh... It's not even that it's just the World Warriors are back. I can deal with that, to be honest. I can live with that. It was the fact that it was all the World Warriors and just not a single Street Fighter 3 character in sight. Not even an alpha character in sight. It was just that whiplash of like, this is the complete opposite of what I wanted. It really just hit me like a truck. But, you know, like most things, when I kind of think about things a bit more and I let myself kind of contemplate it over the day and think about it, I did get over it. And I kind of looked back on that video and I was like, you know what, I just really don't like how I come across here. So I got rid of it. So I just want to kind of throw that out there at the end here. Like, I didn't want people to kind of come in and, you know, have to listen, you know, who are new to this channel and listen to me kind of like go on about why I took down a video that they had no idea existed. So I kind of wanted to throw this at the end there. For the people that, you know, do subscribe to the channel, that did see the video, that did comment on it, yeah, that's kind of all I really want to say about the video. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at the moment. Oh yeah, the one thing I did want to talk about was, I mentioned earlier, there's a Ken rumor that's going around about Ken's backstory. I'm not going to... Basically, Eliza, like, left Ken and took Mel, and Ken's basically gone off the deep end, and, you know, all these characters call him washed up. I've looked into that rumor. It's a load of shit. I found the original source on 4chan, and the person who leaked all that stuff, it leaked, like, other stuff, and, like, it's all nonsense. I've seen so many people on Twitter and other places convinced that this story for Ken is real. It's not. It's complete fabrication. The other stuff, I'm not even going to bother listing the link or like posting what it's talking about, because like it's just complete nonsense. 2 things I remember standing out about it that is just what that is completely baffling as to why people believe this leak is. He says that Kenny Omega, the wrestler, is going to be voicing Cody, and that apparently Capcom are going to purposely release a bad Cammy classic costume so that when people complain about it, they're going to release the good version and charge people money for it. And that's already proved bullshit, because we know that Cammy has a classic costume in the game that looks exactly the same as her Street Fighter 4/Street Fighter 5 design. So, you know, the whole thing's bullshit. I talked about it on Twitter earlier, and I had like my own mutuals like come at me like, well, it's the same person who said all the other leaks. It's like, no, it's not. It's not the same person. So yeah, do not trust anything about... There's been nothing about character backstories in that such detail. Like, nobody's said anything. The people who are legit, who have leaked real info, have not said anything about it. So don't believe anything you read about... Like, basically just don't trust 4chan leaks, I think is the only thing I could really say about this. It's just, if it's from 4chan, just take it with a massive chunk of salt. Because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be bullshit. So that's all I really wanted to say out there, because I know some people are probably going to be like, oh, why don't you talk about this leak? It's like, it's not a leak, it's bullshit. And yeah, so that was kind of the last thing I really wanted to throw out there. Again, I'm very, very excited for the game. The game looks amazing. Like, I really cannot wait to see more. World Turbo looks fantastic. I really just want to, like, the 2 things I want to see the most, I just want to see everybody in game, and I want to know who the last 2 characters are. So yeah, that's kind of it for now. I mean, Capcom are just firing on all cylinders for this game. I'm so impressed by everything they're putting out. And not just that, the response to it has just been so crazy to see. Like, people excited, like, literally, like, just so pumped up for a new Street Fighter game. like, it's just crazy to see. Like, I really like, I'm just so happy with how, like, visually and everything in the game modes. Like, literally my only complaint is that, like, the base roster is just not skewed to my own personal preference, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. I really like some of the other redesigns they've done for characters. Like, Ed looks so much better now. It's insane. Like, I love his redesign. He's probably honestly the character I'm most interested in seeing and maybe trying out when the game comes out. And the new characters all look amazing. Just absolutely phenomenal job by Capcom. I'm so impressed with what they've been doing. They've done such an amazing job, and like, I just want to see more, you know? It kind of got to the point with Street Fighter 5, mostly around Season 4, where I was just like, I just didn't care anymore. Like, after Kage got announced and came out, I wanted that game to end. You know, I was just so tired of seeing it. And, you know, again, it's a new Street Fighter game. We'll see how I feel in, 3 years from now when we get to that same point. You know, the same point in Street Fighter 6's life when they announced Kage for Street Fighter 5 and see how I feel. But I don't know, something about this game, something about it just speaks to me. It really just makes me just so happy and excited for the future of the series. And just to see everybody be excited for Street Fighter again. It's so good to see. So yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about for now. This is the leaks as they are right now. Like I said, if there's any more that drop, I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to stop waffling because this video is probably far too long as it is. So I will see you later. Thank you again and goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.